Well, howdy, friends. Welcome back to Local Matters, where most of what we say is made up and the top of the ticket doesn't matter. We are here again with very, very popular guests. We haven't had that many episodes, but our highest ranking episode featured the gentleman sitting on the couch with me here, who we know as Justice James. How you doing, bud? How you feeling?
Pretty good. I had some fun watching that show last night.
Yeah, that was interesting, and I have a feeling it's going to be significantly more interesting moving forward.
I'm just glad we have an answer.
We don't at all.
Well, no. Trump said he won, so it
we,
counts.
we don't at all have an answer. So that, you know what the funny thing is that the fact that we don't have an answer makes this podcast way easier to do, because now there's really nothing to talk about. There's a lot to talk about, but there's no decision at the top of the ticket. So just we'll let that play out. I don't need to worry about
Do we just
that.
get to flip a coin after a while?
Yeah, after a while, I think
Best 2 out of 3.
I think John Roberts is gonna play. So John Roberts is gonna go up with like Kagan or Sotomayor and rock paper scissors for the presidency at some point.
That'd be a battle I'd watch.
That would be very interesting. That being said, there is no decision currently for the president of the United States, despite the fact that it is the day after Election Day. There likely will not be a decision for quite some time. So
Kanye still has a chance.
In the Dumb and Dumber sense, yes, there is. We are saying there's a chance.
I mean,
for Kanye.
he got 4,000 votes, or over 4,000 votes in Oklahoma, so
4,000 votes.
That's
going to
get it right there.
God, Oklahoma. Why are you a thing? Why can't you just become a part of Texas? You'd be so much better.
They keep us out of the Gulf, though.
That is true, right? They just hold us in there. Them and Mexico, they operate together. That being said, friends, that does make our life a lot easier. But that was crazy. Last night was absolutely bananas as far as elections are concerned. I mean, you and I were there together until what, about 2:00 in the morning?
Yeah,
watching things happen. And when I, because of this podcast, my process on election night was way more in depth than most people. Most people just sit around and they just watch the Chiron for all the states for the presidency, and they're ignoring the other stuff, right? The Senate races and things like that. And you can vouch for this. I was at your house.
Yeah, I was
last
actually
night.
wondering if you were okay, and you're like, "I'm sorry, I'm really zoned in."
I'm sitting here with my laptop, looking up all of the local, who's winning in District 24, who's winning the whatever it is, right? Who's winning the race for Carrollton mayor and all this. That's the kind of stuff that I'm looking at. So I'm not even
I'm
just
over here listening to the what if board. Well, this could happen.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot that still could happen. Gosh, I don't know.
Kanye winning. I
don't know what the heck's gonna happen. Will you stop? Kanye West is not
jealous.
gonna be the president of the United States. I am a little jealous of Kanye West. Somebody who's probably mentally ill and has at best moderate talent, being as famous as he is, and yeah, you can quote me on that. I'm sure Kanye will forgive me. He's found Jesus, so that's not something I'm afraid of. But I don't know, the Kanye phenomenon. It'll pass.
He said he's going again in 2024.
So, what do you think is the best way to celebrate, or I guess it's not even a celebration. What do you think is the best way to watch the election? Do you think we need? I mean,
I think we did a good job of having whiskey and watching it because it was
whiskey
horrible.
and cigars, and and beer and pizza kind of stuff, right? Is that how people should do it, or because a lot of people treat election night like it's the Super Bowl, right? It has a very similar feel of we're all coming together to watch this contest.
I have a conspiracy theory about that, about the news shows.
Go for it, man.
So my whole thing is they just won't call states as they didn't last night after it was 90-something% in for certain states and only 10% in for others, and they're like, it's immediately called. They're just doing that so you watch their show. They haven't got good ratings the entire year. Now it's like, oh, we got you by the shortened curlies. We're going to keep you in.
I was so tired last night. It was like 2 a.m. before I left your house, because I'm like, surely they're going to call Georgia, or surely they're going to call North Carolina, or surely they're going to, and then they're like, nope, that's not happening. Surely they'll call Michigan or Wisconsin or Nevada or something like
I
that.
still
right?
can't get over Georgia allowing their counters to leave like at 10 p.m. in certain districts. It's like, so you've never stuck around past the time. You don't have extras that will do it for you.
That was weird. That was weird.
Just stop counting.
The whole concept of stopping and counting and resuming the next day, I don't know how to feel about that. It was weird. It was just a weird thing that happened. I don't know how to feel about it. That being said, by about 2:00 in the morning, I'm like, listen, I have a kid at home. I need to go to bed. I got to wake up and do this tomorrow. You and I both got to wake up and do this tomorrow. So I'm going home. I'm going to wake up the next day. And then the next day, sure enough, we still don't know. We still have no idea who the president of the United States is going to be come January. But that's not important because that's not what this show is about. This show is about the rest of the ticket, okay? So we're going to take a little bit of time. We're going to talk about the rest of this ticket and what that means for Republicans and Democrats moving forward, particularly in the state of Texas, and really what the state of Texas means nationally. We'll spend a little bit of time talking about that. I want to keep it as local as possible. So let's just start with this. Donald Trump won Texas, and he won Texas comfortably.
Yeah.
This concludes our talking about Donald Trump or Joe Biden for the.
And one of our friends was freaking out when we were watching in the beginning, though. He was
he was
upset
losing.
that it was looking blue.
He was losing his mind. Now at this point, like I said, you guys know me from this podcast. I could care one way or the other when it comes to the top of the ticket. So that kind of stuff, that really doesn't bug me. We do have a very, very partisan Republican friend that was with us at election night who was losing his mind over the fact that Texas looked very narrow there.
I actually was rooting for it to go blue because I wanted to see how much he'd freak out.
Very narrow, and we'll talk about the whole Texas flip concept. I mean, because they've been talking about Texas flipping since 2008.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about the whole Texas flipping concept here in just a second. But it did look very, very narrow, very, very, very close, closer than I think a lot of our Republican friends would have liked for a little bit. But by the end of the night, Donald Trump had won 52.3 to 64.3. So you're looking at an 8-point lead.
Wait, you say to 64?
46, sorry. 46,
okay.
46.
Say that doesn't math up.
46.3. So you're looking at an 8-point lead. That's a comfortable lead. That's about what you expected to see in Texas. Moving on. Oh, by the way, Joe Jorgensen got 1.1, and Howie Hawkins got less than 0.5%. He got 0.3. He got 0.3%. Howie Hawkins did. So very strong Green Party in Texas. Anyway, moving on. We'll talk a little bit about the Senate. We'll talk about John Cornyn. John Cornyn also won very comfortably. Now, this is an interesting thing because in 2018, the Ted Cruz Beto O'Rourke race was really close.
Oh gosh.
It was a really interesting show to watch, and
heard people talking about it all the time at law
Democrats
school.
Almost flipped the seat.
Yeah.
They came real close. They almost flipped the seat there. It would have been really interesting if they had to see what that would have done to the dynamic, not just to the United States Senate, but to the national image of Texas. There are theories that if you can flip a Senate seat and if your representative in Congress is regarded as blue or red, that the people in the state will change their voting habits in according with that, which to me drives me nuts because that just means people are sheep. And they just go, it's like, well, I guess we're Democrats now, right? Because, or I guess we're Republicans now because this happened. And so, whatever. But the Beto O'Rourke Ted Cruz race was really, really close in 2018. And this was not. I mean, this was a 10-point spread. MJ Hagar, who was a decent candidate. I mean, a war veteran, seemed to be a rather moderate on the Democratic side of things. I mean, she wasn't a super Democrat, super lefty Democrat. She seemed like she'd be a good candidate for Texas. And yet here, and again, John Cornyn doesn't really have the charisma of Ted Cruz.
No.
John Cornyn is a fairly banal is not the right word. He's a fairly bland dude. Can we say that? He's a little milquetoast, John Cornyn is. He's just kind of there.
I don't know. Maybe it's because it's hard to fill Cruz's shoes because that dude's just really over the top. And for good reason. I mean, he's good at what he does.
Yeah, the only thing I know about John Cornyn is he was the guy that asked Amy Coney Barrett to show her notes during the hearings. That's the only thing I knew about John Cornyn. I mean, you can do some research and find out what bills he's co-signed or stuff like that, but that's the only time he was ever in the news, and most people had no idea who he was. But I mean, I don't know. So it seemed like if you were gonna tell me that it was gonna be Ted Cruz versus Beto O'Rourke and John Cornyn versus MJ Hagar, and one of these races was gonna be super close, I would have told you that the close race would have been Cornyn Hagar. I would have said that, but that's not the case. What changed? What do you think happened?
I don't know. I mean, I think it just got a little more partisan this time. 'Cause, I mean, you're this one, like we talked about in the first episode. I don't understand how you're undecided right now, or were undecided when you're going in. I think it's gotten pretty contentious that if you're going blue or red.
Yeah.
Or the other ones.
Or the other ones.
Yeah, but I really think this one it was kind of like because the Democrats really pushed a lot for Beto during 2018, and they didn't really look like they pushed a lot for this last one. Like they really thought if they could take Cruz out, I think because Cruz is the loudmouth of the two.
Yeah,
that's when they wanted Cruz out of there.
So it goes back to that sort of sheeple argument that I made.
Like kind of, but it's really just Ted like Cruz. They just didn't pay attention enough like to this one. It was 2018 was the big one, I think. But again, because you're potentially getting Cruz out of there.
Yeah.
But Cornyn, he's not really that much of a fireball, so no one's really going to pay attention to him.
Beto was just a better campaigner than MJ Hagar. I mean, he had the, I mean, you used to see the black Beto sign / bumper sticker. Used to be everywhere. They were all over the place, right? He was really good at branding. He was really good at getting himself out there. He was an interesting character because he skateboarded and he cursed and he skateboarded while eating Whataburger and that. I mean, he was one of those guys, right? He was an interesting guy to watch, and I think those interesting races tend to be a lot tighter because people are just more engaged. I mean, we asked our friend and I'm not gonna say who he is because he might be on the show at some point, but we asked our friend. On yesterday, right during the election time, do you know who the Democratic candidate is for Senate in Texas? And he couldn't tell us. No. He had no idea, right? And we said it's MJ Hagar. And he goes, yeah. So we said it's MJ Hagar, and he goes, "Oh, I've heard that name." I'm like, well, I hope so, right? I hope you've at least heard it once. So that was an interesting race, and so this is a show based in Texas, but I do have to point out something. I want to ask my friend James. Something rather interesting here. James is currently sitting next, and I know you guys can't see us because this is an audio recording. James is sitting next to me here on the couch, and James has a gray shirt on, and it's got some letters on the side on the front. What do the letters say, James? What do your shirt say?
It says Roll Tide.
It says Roll Tide. Roll. Why does it say Roll Tide?
Because I'm an Alabama fan.
Because you're a fan of the University of Alabama. A university that you did not attend. I didn't
realize you had to go to a university to be a fan.
In a state that you've never lived in. It's just anyway, so you are a Tide fan. So what do you think about old Tuberville?
Oh, God.
What do you think about old Tuberville, man? For those of you that don't know, Tommy Tuberville
was the coach of Auburn.
Was the coach of Auburn and is now the senator from the great state of Alabama. He toppled Doug Jones, who flipped the seat from Roy Moore in 2018.
I don't think that was a hard one to flip.
That wasn't a hard one to flip. No,
when you have all those allegations against you.
All those very credible allegations towards some really not good stuff that I'm not even sure we can say on this podcast.
I don't want to.
Roy Moore was not a good guy. And you're not a good guy when the Democrat in Alabama beats you. But Doug Jones did win, so they flipped that seat. It was flipped back, kind of making the Colorado situation a wash because Colorado also flipped their seat from Republican to Democrat. But then you got the Alabama seat back, so it kind of all evened out.
Right.
It's looking like the Republicans are going to retain their Senate majority. So what do you think about an Auburn coach being your
I'm just
representative?
I'm glad really now that I don't have to live there and listen to him. But what's funny is that in my family, this has a more hatred because my wife graduated from Texas Tech. He was the Texas Tech coach, and he was horrible at it. So every time she sees him, she has demon eyes and wants him to burst in flames. She actually last night was rooting for Jones.
For Doug Jones.
Because she was like, I don't want him to win anything at all.
Yeah.
And that was, I was like, with your experience, that's fair.
I don't want Tommy to win anything. Gosh. Okay. All right. Well, I just had to get your opinion on that because you got the Auburn coach.
You're just mad at winners.
Well, hey, he's a winner. He won last night. Let's hope that he is a better senator than he is football coach. If Texas Tech is anything to say about it, right?
Oh,
but yeah. Anyway, so that's a little of an aside. But U.S. Senate likely to retain their Republican majority, and Texas did contribute to that with a sweeping, very comfortable walking away victory for John Cornyn. Now, again, these are national things, but I think that if you're going to focus on the national, right, and we're going to talk about a couple other national elections here, if you're going to focus on the national, the presidency, and I said this in my last video, is not where your attention needs to be.
No,
it's not, right? Because let's say that Trump gets reelected. Well, if Trump got reelected, but they flipped the Senate, that could be really problematic for Trump.
Yeah.
Because now you've got a House and you have a Senate who might remove him from office, right? He's already been impeached once. There is that possibility of in the second term. So even if Trump wins, but they don't keep the Senate, that's a problem. By contrast, if Joe Biden ends up winning this election, his road to countrywide change is going to be a lot more difficult with the Texas Senate majority being Republican as opposed to Democrat. So if you're gonna focus on something, and I know that the hot seat is the president, we all watch the president, and we still don't even know who it's gonna be. But to me,
told you who it's gonna be.
If you're gonna focus, I know it's not. It's gonna be Kanye West, President Yeezy. Yeah. I think that if you're gonna focus on the national, you need to focus on Congress, because I think Congress has more power to influence and change your life.
Well, they hold the purse strings.
Than does the president. Yeah, they hold the purse strings, right? They hold the budget. And my prayer, and I try not to get my political opinions too out there in the open on this podcast, but I think this is a fairly uncontroversial one. Anybody that says they're going to stop spending so much money in Congress, they have my vote. Anyone that says that, right? Anybody that touches on that. And that is kind of the third rail.
But it kind of feels like when they say that, they have their fingers behind their back crossed.
Yeah, crossed, yeah.
Because it seems like no matter who it is, they love charging that credit card.
It's the third rail of politics, man. You can't touch it, because if you stop proposing free stuff, then people won't vote for you anymore. And that, friends, that applies to Republican and Democrat.
That's why I was wanting Yeezy. He was going to give me free Beats.
Free Beats. Oh, free Beats headphones.
No, he's just gonna make beats. For
I thought he was like, he's got a big old beat farm.
No, he's gonna give you a bunch of
dirt tasting beats, right? All right, so let's talk about the Texas House. The Texas House the Texas representatives in the United States House of Representatives, they are pretty well solid. I don't think there were any shifts.
Wasn't it mostly incumbents
in the House districts? Yeah,
like that one.
Mostly incumbents that won. And most of those incumbents were Republicans. You had, for example, right, Louis Gohmert, who's in District 1, looks like he walked away with it, 72%.
Yeah.
72% of the vote, right? It's one.
That dude I'm from that area. That dude has won that seat so many years in a row.
Louis Gohmert, the 903.
I don't think he even tries anymore. He's like, why not?
Yeah.
And people are like, yeah, sure.
So his opponent, Hank Gilbert, got 82,000 votes. Louis Gohmert got 218,000 votes.
I did not know that many Democrats lived out
there. He walking away. Crenshaw won, slightly tighter margin than that. He won by about 12 points, looks like. Looks like about 14 points. So you're seeing sizable victories in the House. So
it's kind of amazing how it is that one-sided, though. Like you'd think, but especially how, Trump did win by a smaller margin. You would think that Texas would vote that way.
Yes.
And yet, when it comes to Congress people, it's like, nope, fully red, not hardly any blue.
So here's what that indicates, and this is what blew my mind as I was watching this happen last night, right? Because Trump won comfortably, but it's Texas. We all assumed he was going to win comfortably.
Right.
He won by a smaller margin than we thought he would. Okay.
Right.
What that means is there were lots of Texans that walked into the ballots, voted Trump at the top of the ticket, and full Republican ticket underneath. Or sorry, Biden at the top of the ticket. So they vote for Biden, and then they just run the full Republican ticket down through the rest. Which to me, that's weird.
Is that a
That's
product
just
of
weird.
like us getting rid of those straight ticket votes?
I think that was a big part of it too, yeah, because you can't do the straight ticket voting anymore, which totally for. I mean, if you remember our last episode, totally for getting rid of the straight ticket vote. But yeah, you can't do that in Texas. You actually had to go and vote each individual person, which I did. Yes, it took time. No, I don't care. But there were a lot of seats that the Democrats targeted for a flip that they just didn't get. In fact, they didn't get any of them. They were looking for House District 6, Ron Wright. They didn't get that one. Ron Wright.
I was hoping you said Ron White. I was
Ron
like,
White,
finally,
yeah.
he's doing something again. I love it.
He won fairly sizably there. House District 7 was a Republican attempt at a flip. Lizzie Fletcher won that one by a pretty narrow margin, only about 3 points, but she kept it, right? So everything kind of remained stagnant in the United States House from a Texas perspective. The tightest of those races was actually, and this is one that I want to talk about because it's one that is right here in our area, is District 24, right? So we live in District 24, you and I do, James, which is kind of the north of Dallas DFW district, right? So you're
Burbs.
you're getting it's kind of the burbs of Dallas. And so that is one area that has been really heavily targeted by Democrats in order to get the flip, because the burbs are tending to go a little bit more purple in the state of Texas right now. So they really pushed for that. I mean, they flipped it in the Texas House with Michelle Beckley last election, and they went to try and flip that area for the United States House of Representatives, and they got really close.
But is this horseshoes or hand grenades?
Yeah, horse don't count, or so close.
Horse grenades?
Close don't count in horse grenades, right? It's really close, but it looks like Beth Van Duyne is going to pull it out, right? So again, not all of the votes are in yet, but it really does look like Beth Van Duyne is going to pull this one out. She is ahead by about a point. It looks like most of the votes for that area have been tallied over Candace Valenzuela. So she's gonna get that. That's a race to watch. It might change here, but I doubt it. And by the end of the day, I think that old Beth is gonna be in the.
Yeah, I
the
think
House of
our votes are a
Representatives.
little easier to count than some of those other states like
For sure.
Pennsylvania.
For sure, yeah. God, I'm so glad we're not doing this in Pennsylvania. That would be crazy. So they put in a ton of money into Candace Valenzuela. I mean, they really pushed hard for that. There were signs everywhere in this area.
Yeah, there was.
Every time I turned on the
those commercials.
YouTube or the television, there was commercials on there about all kinds of stuff. So they really pushed hard for Candace Valenzuela, and for what it's worth, she could still win, but it really does look like the Republican is going to win there, and there is no incumbent, so that's an interesting one.
Right. Because that one was totally open.
Yeah. Now the incumbent was a Republican, but
You're getting a whole different Republican on this one if she wins.
yeah. So if Candace Valenzuela wins, that seat will flip, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen, right? It's 48.8% to 47.5%. It looks like we've got very narrow victory by about.
Where's the other percentages at?
Just over 5,000 votes. Was that?
Is that math out?
Well, no, there were three other candidates in that race.
Oh.
Right. So you had Mr. Darren Hamilton, Libertarian, Steve Kuzmich, looks like, Independent, and Mark Bauer, Independent. So they took the rest of those points away from Beth Van Duyne. And I'm fairly certain that's how you pronounce that. Her name is spelled Duyne, but everything that I've seen is said Beth Van Duyne. And so she's going to hold on to that. All right,
I'm just in the school of thought that if you don't know someone's name, you just say it really fast so it sounds like you said it.
So it looks like let's move into the local area. Okay, so we've talked about the national. Let's move into the local. Here's the deal, guys. So regardless of who ends up, if you live in the state of Texas, regardless of who ends up in the White House, um, this was a Republican win in Texas.
You think so?
I think so. Uh, Here's why. We've been talking a lot about the idea of a Texas flip. They started talking about it in 2008. 2018 was a big year where everyone was like, "Oh, look how close it was. Texas is a purple state." I mean, even in the election today, they had Texas as a toss-up, and I was kind of chuckling at that. It did get a little close, but I'm like, I don't think there's any way Texas is a toss-up yet. Now, here's the thing, guys. Texas might go purple. Texas might flip, but not today. Texas held off pretty well last night, especially when it came to the United States House of Representatives and the Texas House of Representatives. It all basically was a wash, right? There wasn't a ton of Republican flips. There were a few flips from seats that they lost in 2018. They gained, I think, 2 of those back. So
But how many did they lose?
they didn't lose any.
No. The ones they lost in 2018.
Oh, in 2018.
So
Yeah,
it's like we lost 10, but we gained 2. It's like
I think
so
they-
you
I think
didn't
they
gain
lost-
anything, bro.
I think they lost 12 in 2018. They
So
lost
they didn't
12 seats.
gain a dang thing.
So they didn't gain a lot, but they still had the majority in 2018.
Right.
Or after 2018, they still had the majority, and this was kind of the litmus test for Texas, right? To see is Texas really trending blue, or was 2018 just kind of an interesting fluke because Donald Trump is so divisive and because of all the various things that were going on in Texas politics at the time, right? With Beto O'Rourke and Ted Cruz, 2 very vivacious candidates that were really bringing out a high voter turnout.
Oh yeah.
And so that was kind of the thing was you're watching the Texas State House saying, was 2018 an interesting fluke, or is this a trend?
Yeah.
And what 2020 said, I think pretty decidedly, was no, it's not. I think we're good. I think we're good if we're a Republican.
Like so,
Right.
2018 was kind of the knee-jerk reaction, and then 2020 was them then essentially the voters going back to their typical voting.
Back to their
ways.
typical voting ways. Now, what would have really sent a message, if you want to really send a message as a Republican to the Democrats, is you flip a couple of those, or you flip more of those seats that you lost in 2018. You say, no, that was a fluke. We're taking these back. Thank you very much. But that didn't happen either.
I just imagine someone coming into like their sister's room and taking back their toy, like this was mine, and then going back in their room.
So it's looking like, I mean, to me, it's looking like there's not a lot of push and pull. There is some push and stop, though, right? So
What does that mean?
So instead of it's like, I try and think of it like a game of tug of war, right?
Okay.
Where you see people going backwards and then it shifts and they start moving the other direction. It seems like it's shifting, but then the other team is just kind of planting their feet and saying no further than this. And they did that, right? So Texas House districts don't really look terribly different today. There were a couple of flips, so it trended purple, but it didn't trend back towards the red side of the spectrum, right? And I think if you're a Republican and you really want to send a message to Democrats, that's what you do. They weren't able to do that. So what does this indicate? Do you think, what do we think?
Weakness.
Weakness. Weakness how?
No, I'm just playing.
What-
It's politics, man.
What do we think about, but does this mean that Texas will eventually flip?
Yeah, because all those Californians keep moving here.
The Californians, interestingly, have nothing to do with it. So that's a really common thing in Texas.
Who's paying you off, Nick?
You're
protect
hearing
the
a lot
Californians?
about Californians. Now, here's the thing: we know a Californian that moved here.
Yeah.
The most Republican individual I've ever met in my life, ever.
There's
ever,
thinking conservatively.
Yes.
And then there's his spectrum.
There's Donald Trump, right? And then somewhere between him and Hitler is this guy, right? He's very Republican, and he's a transplant. He came here he came here from California. Now, what we saw in 2018 is that a lot of the transplants actually ended up voting for Cruz. So a lot of the people that are coming from California to Texas are doing so because they're more on the right side of the spectrum and they kind of want to move away. And they're coming here and they're sort of voting on the right. They're voting conservative. The more liberal votes are actually coming from native-born Texans, younger native-born Texans.
They're being traitors.
They're being traitors. No, it's just a shift. This is how political shifts work. But a good deal of native-born Texans actually voted for Beto O'Rourke, especially on the younger side of the spectrum.
Yeah.
But we're all really quick to blame the transplants. I'm not entirely sure that that's what's happening.
I want to have someone to blame, and they're the easiest ones because no one likes California if you're from Texas.
Yeah. Texas and California. I will say this.
I saw a video about that. It was like Californians, they still have their plates on them.
Yeah.
And it was like a joke video. They're going around, and of course Texans would look at the plate and look at them, and then just go, "I'm sorry, I'm getting it changed. I swear, I'm here for the long haul."
Texas and California have a weird rivalry that's kind of developed in recent memory. From when I was a kid, I remember it being Texas and Colorado. Like Texas and Colorado people didn't like each other very much.
No.
Because Colorado was mad that they used to be a part of the Republic, and Texas was mad because they left. Right now, that's kind of an old wound, but that's what I remember. But yeah, so people who are on the right side of the spectrum here in Texas tend to blame the transplants as a reason for the shift. I don't think that's the reason for the shift. I think that this is happening organically.
I'm gonna find that one article that backs up what I'm saying, and that's gonna be the absolute truth.
The thing is that if you're on the right, if you're a conservative, I'm not entirely sure how you feel about Texas specifically. I am certain about how you feel about the election in general. I think that regardless of who wins the White House, if you're a Republican, you should be feeling pretty good, right? I think that last night was a win, right? Because you, like I said, you kept your Senate majority. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
You gained a couple of seats in the United States House. Also a big deal, right? So there's a lot of things that went your way if you're a conservative last night. The presidency might not, but at the end of the
currently losing.
Yeah, at the end of the day, does that right? What's the deal with that? How much does that matter? Is really the question there. So,
but again, Trump already announced the win, so it's a done deal. It's how it works.
What?
That's that Constitution in there somewhere.
Can you just? Anyway, we're not talking about Donald Trump and how frustrated.
I had to get that joke in.
How frustrating he is. It's unbelievably frustrating. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the Texas House, who is keeping steady. So, what do you think? How do you think Republicans should be feeling about the future of their Texas legislator?
I mean, like we said, most of the incumbents won, correct?
Most of the incumbents won, but that includes Democrats.
Right. So nothing's really going to be switching. At least the same parties are there, so you know who is willing to maybe cross the aisle and who may not be. But again, that just depends on what they're trying to pass. Mm-hmm. But for a Republican standpoint, if they didn't flip any to Democrat, then I guess they're feeling fine. It's like, okay, I wish we could have, actually done the other part and maybe flip some Democrat ones.
Yeah.
But if all you can do is stand your ground, well, I guess from a team look at it, if you see them as your team or whatever, you can at least say, like, well, at least we're not giving anything up. So the D line is staying strong. We just can't score with the D line.
Yeah. That's kind of where I think we are. I think that the Republicans are holding their ground, but there isn't a lot of movement back in the other direction. So my feeling is this. I feel like if you're a Republican, you feel good about last night. You don't feel you feel a little bit of hesitancy to be optimistic looking at the future, because it doesn't seem like Republicans have the ability to gain back the ground that they lose. And if you even if you just lose it one House seat at a time, eventually it will flip.
I'm gonna push back on that one. I think if you're a Republican, you should have worry for the presidential vote. But as you said with that article, it kind of showed is there's a good amount of people who voted for Biden the top, and then straight Republican the rest of it.
Yeah, which is
So at least from the
Weird.
local level,
yeah.
that's actually a good thing if that's how you see it. And especially, I mean, same for, I doubt there's any Democrats that voted for Trump at the top and then Democrats all the way down. But I mean, you know, it's 2020. We've all been surprised.
For sure.
Um,
2020. And let me just say this. Let me say this on a and I don't know. I didn't look at a lot of these polls on the local level, but let me just say this about the 2020 election. Pollsters need to get their mess together.
just learn to code.
They need that was because even Trump win or lose, them polls were wrong. They were just wrong. They were wrong. They're not even. I mean,
One of the shows we were watching last night, one of the persons started talking trash about the pollsters, and the person that was leading the conversation was like, "Well, I mean, let's not just go." I was like, "You were, dude, you're wrong.
I mean,
it was just wrong."
Even the national poll. So, like, that was the thing is in 2016, the national polling was at least okay.
Close.
It was close.
It was in the margin of error.
Yeah, the national polling wasn't even close, right? The national popular vote was significantly tighter than
We haven't counted all the ballots, Nick.
We haven't counted all the ballots. That is true.
We
But
gotta wait 14 more months until we can finish
We gotta
counting.
relook at how you do that kind of stuff. Which is the cool thing about it is that polling is done very differently on the state and local level, so it's
Yeah.
actually a lot easier to track that kind of stuff. So I think we're still good for the purposes of this show. But yeah, the national polling, y'all gotta fix whatever y'all are doing. So do you remember the last episode that you were on, Justice James? We talked about a House district. Do you remember who it was? What it was?
Was it the Fighting 65th?
The Fighting 65th. Yeah. Do you remember who the candidates were?
Ooh, Kronda Timish.
Kronda Timish.
And
Kronda.
I think she was a Republican, and I don't remember the Democrat's name.
Democrat was Mrs. Michelle Beckley.
Beckley.
Michelle Beckley. I don't know if it's a Mrs. or a Miss, but it's Michelle Beckley.
I think just go with Miss now. That way you just kind of avoid it.
Yeah. That race is still ongoing, and it's real close. It is really, really close.
Who's currently in the lead, though?
Michelle Beckley, the incumbent, is currently winning that seat by about 2,000, 1,500 votes.
Dang.
But that's a really
Local
tight,
levels,
yeah,
where one vote literally can matter.
That's a really tight margin, even at a local level. You're only talking about 51 to 48, so it's a 3-point spread. That's within the margin of error, and they have a surprising amount of polling locations that haven't reported yet, even though it's now 1:00, right? 1:30, the next day. So
Texas did not have a lot of write-ins or mail-ins.
Seriously, there is a surprising amount of these districts that haven't reported yet. So Kronda could still win. It does look like Michelle Beckley is going to hold that seat, but she could still win. And that would be interesting. It'd be interesting to see that seat flip. It looks like.
Isn't she on her first term or just off her first term?
Yeah, so she's a freshman. She is still a freshman congressperson. But if she wins this one, she'll be
established.
She'll be an established, congressperson.
That's one that really gets really hard to take the incumbent out. Is once they've gone 2 terms, they're kind of cinched in there.
Yeah, they're pretty well done. And
they know which babies to kiss in order to get the votes.
The other thing that's important to note, and this is also on the Texas state level, not just the national level, but it's 2020. You know what that means?
They get to decide the lines.
That means census and redistricting.
Yep.
So if you can hold the seat now,
it's the best time to hold the seat.
It's the best time to hold the seat. This is the best time to hold the line.
The leading party is the one who gets to make the most.
That's right. That's right. It's gerrymandering season, folks. So
Woo!
if you can hold the seat, do it now.
You may be asking, why won't the Supreme Court solve it? They said political question.
Yep.
And they said, see you later. We don't want to touch this with a 30-foot pole.
Why do you think the Supreme Court wouldn't?
It's too political because it's you're letting a political party write the lines, and people don't live in perfect squares.
Mm-hmm.
It's not how people. I mean, there are certain neighborhoods that are set up that way, but that one single neighborhood is not how people live, especially in rural Texas. There's no magic square that just says, okay, this person over and down the road, they're all in the same one, and the people across the street, well, it's all different ones. Like, no, I mean, you go to West Texas, they're all spread out because there's very few sparse places that people actually live. So it's tough to prove absolutely that it's done based on racial. You may find one or two districts that you can find some pretty good evidence on.
Yeah.
And when the case actually came up to the Supreme Court, they had one that was showing that Democrats were showing unfavorably and making it kind of like just don't say anything, and then you had to show Republicans to try to make it say like, see, so both parties are doing it. Can you at least solve it? And they said no, because it's way too political. And even if you could find one district that's doing it for racial reasons or other reasons, that's one out of the entire Texas or entire United States.
Yeah.
So it's not touching it.
I did hear some and I think this actually happened in Texas. I did hear some ridiculous redistricting, and when you talk about gerrymandering, this is gerrymandering. There was like a literal street that was on the edge of one of these districts, and one side of the street voted Republican, and the other side of the street voted Democrat, and so they literally just drew the line down the middle of the street.
We just want to make sure we have our votes this way.
Exactly. That's gosh, there's gotta be a way to fix that. Anyway, let's
vote
talk.
your party in. That's pretty much it.
You vote. That's what you
every
do.
year that every year that ends in zero.
Every year that ends in a zero.
You want to make sure your party is the one having the say.
Get out the vote, which totally happened. I will tell you this year.
Oh, good golly! So many people voted this year.
More votes than any other election in the history of the United States. Legitimately.
History.
I think the only election in which more people voted was in the second biggest election was in 1934. It was, and I don't even know who it was. I'll have to look it up.
34 is probably FDR. I'm just throwing that out there. He was there forever, so I don't think
it was FDR. Yeah, there's a good chance. Yeah, that's like if you're.
There's 12 years, or almost 12 years that dude was there.
There's
so
a bunch of them. So. Moving on to the next thing we want to talk about. Now, this is an interesting thing for Texas specifically, and I'll let you talk about why. Railroad Commissioner. Why do Texans care so much about Railroad Commissioner?
Because it's oil and gas.
Oil and gas.
The name Railroad Commissioner is just a front. It's literally just oil and gas. That's all they decide.
The Texas Railroad Commission.
Hey, if you don't plug up your well, Railroad Commissioner / oil and gas is the ones that actually fill it for you.
They regulate oil and gas.
That's all they do.
That's their job.
And occasionally go to one railroad to say, now I can't be a liar. I saw one.
I have seen a train. I was stuck behind one.
Hold up, take a picture with me. See, I care. And we're moving on.
Yeah. But that is all they care about. That went Republican pretty solidly. So James Wright or Jim Wright.
What if a Democrat won it? It was one of those that it's always like the proposed Democrat. They hate guns. They hate oil, whatever. And they're the ones regulating. Or it's like, yeah, we're just not going to do it anymore. So, sorry, guys. Texas would revolt.
Yeah, that would be.
No, you're out. Other guys back in. My bad. We screwed up. Our bad.
No, Jim Wright, Republican, won the oil and gas seat, right? Railroad Commissioner, pretty solidly, right? 10-point spread there. That was a pretty easy one for them. I'd be shocked. Even if Texas did flip, I think the Railroad Commissioner would still be a Republican. I just don't think...
There's just too many Texans who don't trust... the Democrat could be like a very reasonable person. It's like, nope, don't trust it. We're going to stick with the Republican.
Yeah, that's the thing is you got so many people that work out in the oil fields, especially out in where you're from, right?
Yeah.
Out in the Lubbock.
None of them are Democrats.
Yeah, out in that area. And they might write full Democrat ticket, but they'll get to Railroad Commissioner and be like, nope, I'm following that R. I'm gonna put the R down on this one.
I don't even know who this person is, but it has an R.
Yep. State Board of Education. Now this is interesting because I really thought that this would go.
I thought that would be more mixed too.
This would be more mixed than it was because a lot of people that vote for education, right? And I know I have people in my family, lots of people in my family who deal in education. Your wife deals in education, right? She's
somewhat.
Yeah,
she may work at it every day or something.
She's an educator, right? But your wife works in education. People that work in education tend to skew left. Pretty regular, and it's because Democrats have a tendency to emphasize education more. Now we see exceptions to that, right? Because I don't think anyone's going to be like, you know what, education not important. But
never heard of it.
Democrats do tend to make a point of having more of a plan, really having something issued out there. Teachers unions and educators tend to be their honey hole. So I tend to see these sorts of things skew. and it really didn't. The Republicans kind of walked away with this one, right? Now there were three incumbents, and all of the yeah, so no, sorry, four incumbents, and all of the incumbents kept their seat. Out of those four incumbents, there were one, two, three. Yes, there were three Republicans and one Democrat, right? So the Democrat, Georgina Perez, and then you had the incumbent Republicans, Kevin Ellis, Tom Maynard, and Sue Melton Malone. So right there, you don't see any flips. There were no flips
Right.
that happened on the board on the education board, but there were several races that did not have an incumbent. All of those, with one exception, went to Republicans. Right. So the State Board of Education District 5 went to a Democrat. It went to Rebecca Bell, and I cannot even say her last name, Metero, I believe it is. Rebecca Bell Metero.
See, just say it fast.
Just say it quickly, and I think it'll be good. That one looks pretty solidly like it's going to go Democrat. Everyone else went Republican. So the Republicans kind of ran the table on the education board, which I get that this is Texas, but guys, that's not nothing. I mean, if you're a Republican, you got to be pretty happy about that.
Yeah, at least they can. I mean, I think they're going to control what we spend on education in our state. Of course, that's barring national, blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
But at least from our standpoint, if that's how you lean, you should be happy.
Well, the Texas Board of Education, as far as their spending is concerned, the Republicans, when it comes to education, their perspective tends to be more, hey, let's find ways to reallocate the funds that we have, rather than putting more money into it.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas Democrats seem to be like, no, we need to prioritize spending on education. We need to put more money into the education system. So there's a little bit of a shift. And I can see why, when you look at those two messages, I can see why you would prefer the Democrats.
Yeah.
Right? Because Democrats are saying, no, we're going to give you more money. So if you're investing in education, then that would be what you want. But Texans, again, they gave it to the Republicans pretty solidly here. All right, now I had you on this show for a reason, James, because we have a lot of justices that were up for grabs, and let's talk about how those went. So I'm actually gonna pass my notes over here to you. I'm gonna let you talk about this. I'm gonna let you tell me what you think about these different justices and what they do and why they matter. Because I'm not gonna lie to you. This is not my area of expertise. I have no idea what this means, right? So I'm going to pass this over to you, and you can take a look at it. Tell us what happened with the courts.
Well, I mean, this could be really quick.
Okay, then make it really quick.
No one flipped anything. All the incumbents won.
They stayed.
So if you were happy with the decisions, especially those who were in my realm about how they made decisions for the bar exam, then they're still in there. So that may be good or bad depending on how you saw it.
Now, were you happy with how they made decisions for the bar exam?
No, I was looking for the free ride to not have to do it.
Oh,
I was like, diploma privilege just because I don't want to do it. I mean, I knew I volunteered to take it. I just feel like, but if I don't have to.
You know that you're a terrible person, right?
Yeah, I don't care.
Okay. So nothing.
And they still let me vote, so it doesn't matter.
What were we looking at? How many seats were up for grabs?
Well, let me see. I think there were just 4 seats up for grabs, so that's almost about half of the actual Supreme Court in Texas. The Chief Justice, Nathan Hecht, he did a hecking good job. See what I did there?
There you go. A hecting good job.
Hecting good job, and he won.
Okay.
He won pretty decisively, even with Mark Ash, who was a Libertarian candidate. He got like 308,000.
Interesting. I'm gonna sidebar you here for a second, and then we'll go back to talking about this. Libertarian candidates. Do you think that helped or hurt Republicans versus Democrats?
In which case?
In any case, just in general. So
I don't know. You've always heard the term it's a throwaway vote, but
a libertarian on the ticket, does that hurt Democrats or Republicans more? What do you think?
I think it hurts Republicans more. Because I think I know a lot more libertarian people who would side a lot with the conservative talking points, and a few elements they would go liberal.
Yeah.
But I haven't really met a person that's that libertarian that has a lot more liberal ideals, but then stays libertarian.
Yeah.
Because libertarian's more about hands off, and weirdly enough, liberals have kind of made it more government, more hands-on.
See, I don't agree with you. I don't agree
Okay.
with you at all. Here's the deal. And again, anecdotal. I get it, anecdotal. But there's really no way to collect this kind of data, especially with libertarians, because
So you asked me a trick question?
libertarians
Wow, good faith gone.
is the fun box. It's the mystery box. They're the mystery box candidate, right? There's no really way to tell. But I will say, I know 4 people that voted for libertarian candidates in these elections, right? That voted for any libertarian candidates at all, whether it was the top of ticket libertarian or somewhere in the middle, right? I know 4 people that I know voted for libertarian candidates. I am convinced, 100% convinced, that if any one of them had voted for a major party, they would have voted D all the way. So I think that the libertarian vote is hurting the Democrats more than it's hurting the Republicans.
That was the claim in 2016.
I will say that whoever loses, they're going to blame the libertarians.
Always.
It's always you guys have it so rough, you libertarians out there. You have it so rough because no matter who
You get
loses,
told
they're
you
all
don't
like,
matter,
it's your
don't
fault.
Yeah,
It's
you
your
get told
fault.
you don't matter, don't count, and whenever the vote doesn't go the way the person wants, it's your fault
Yep.
of why we lost. It's
And
like,
by
I
the
thought it
way-
didn't matter yesterday. Now I matter?
And by the way, to quote Mean Girls, libertarians, stop trying to make yourselves happen. You're never going to happen. There is never going to be a third-party system in the United States
You'll see.
unless we radically change the way that we vote in this country or in our states. Right? You have
Yeah.
to change the way that you vote. It's not a social thing. Right? It's not a fact that Americans just aren't comfortable with it. It's the way money works and the way our voting works in politics. You have to dramatically change that. So you're never going to happen. If you want to vote your conscience, cool. Vote your conscience. Do your thing, right? But don't say that, oh, well, we're just, this is our year. This is when we take it, right? This is when we enter onto the stage. You're never going to happen, right? You're going to turn back into a pumpkin at the end, right? Your Prince Charming isn't coming. So chill. But anyway, that's the thing. I have no disrespect for you. If you want to vote your conscience, vote your conscience.
I'm just
know.
belittling your entire beliefs.
Yeah,
Don't
no,
worry about
it's
it.
not, I'm not belittling your beliefs. I'm just saying you're never going to happen, right? I'm sorry. I'm just stating reality, right? I think I'm very sympathetic to a lot of libertarian beliefs. I am, but it's never going to happen. So just
I like how you threw a Mean Girls quote in there, and then you quoted Ted Cruz as well. It's you know what? Your
when did I
transitions.
quote Ted Cruz?
Vote with your conscience. That was what
Oh,
he said
vote with your
at the
conscience.
RNC.
Certainly, yeah. Vote with your conscience. If you want to vote Green Party, go vote Green Party. That's fine. Just know that whoever loses is going to be mad at you for the next 4 years.
Yeah.
That is your lot in life.
You do
are
get
there.
blamed a lot.
You are there to be a punching bag for losers. That's what's going to happen. Anyway, that's my rant about libertarianism. Okay, so we were talking about the Supreme Courts. So what would okay, so let me ask you this question, okay? If let's say that all of them had flipped.
Right.
All the incumbents had flipped and by the way, all the incumbents
Are red.
Are red, right? So you have a straight red Supreme Court in Texas.
At least in 4 spots, and the Chief Justice is red as well.
Yeah. So you flip that, right?
Right.
Now you got what? 6, 7 Democrats on the court? How does that change our daily lives?
Well, that's the thing, because I don't believe that a lot of the justices, even though these are elected justices, really kind of go with a hard line, right or left. It's just kind of, I think it's more of the softer line, like, yeah, if you had to put me to a spot, I'm Republican, but nah. Because if you go super partisan when it comes to how you're voting, you're just gonna get freaking kicked off because judges have a canons they have to obey. And if they just said, the heck with that, I'm going to do what I want. Well, it's not going to go very well for you.
Yeah. So do you think that the R and the D really doesn't matter
I don't
that
really
much?
think it matters as much in this element. I mean, I could be completely wrong. There's probably a person who's like a Democrat saying, this person did this one blank thing, and I'm not thinking of it. Fair enough, but I just don't see it happening too partisan because, like I said, it is a Supreme Court justice, which means they get too partisan and so overt, then they can get themselves impeached.
Yeah. So you think that most people are just putting the R next to their name because it's Texas and they think they're going to win?
That'd be the easiest way to do it, yeah.
Yeah. And so if you're an R and you're an incumbent, that you just
stick
pretty much
with
have
R.
You have a spot for life, right?
Yeah. It's
We-
like
we
a lot
too.
all the crap you hear about.
We too have lifetime Supreme Court appointments in Texas. We just do it differently
Yeah.
here.
There's another way around it, yeah.
So you're saying that if these seats had flipped, it really wouldn't have mattered that much?
I don't think it would matter too much, like just because you can't go too gung ho. Because even the person who voted you is like, well, I mean, I like what you're doing here, but when they get the power, we are screwed.
Yeah.
And that's what you do. You just turn people off, and they'd go with the automatic other one, even if they're not a good judge or shouldn't be a good judge. I don't know.
Well, I think if you're up for the Texas
I'm
Supreme Court,
still torn between actually voting in your own justices in
you'll be
Texas.
at least a good judge, right? So
Huh. So only one of the Supreme Court places, place 6, which Jane Bland won. That's the only one of the races that did not have a libertarian in it.
yeah,
And let's see, she won it at 55%. Hecht won it at 53%. Jeffrey Boyd won it at 53%. And see, that's what I'm kind of saying. It's 44 for the Democrat. And then this one, 43.9. So it might as well be 44.
yeah.
So libertarians literally took away votes from the Republicans in this instance. Because the only person who breached over 53 is Jane Bland, who didn't have to run against a libertarian. But every other Democrat that's running for it, they got at least 44%, except for that 43.9. So just to be fully transparent, technically not 44, but if we're rounding up like we do it every time, that's 44.
So I think you might have cracked the code there. So Republicans, you won, but you should still be mad at the Libertarians.
Yeah, you should still hate on them.
You should
whatever.
still be angry at the Libertarians.
Feel free to blame them for anything.
That's fine.
They'll just say okay and move on.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the tendency seems to be that Libertarians would be more interested in voting right, and the Green Party people.
Well, the
would be more
whole
interested in voting
BS statement about it, to put it on a bumper sticker, is fiscally conservative, but
socially liberal.
which means nothing.
Yeah, means I stand for nothing.
Means
that's
I made
not
a cool
true.
bumper sticker. Please
that's not
buy
true.
it.
We need to stop being so mean to Libertarians, man. That's
All
that's
three
not
are going
true.
to stop listening.
Yeah, well, we need those. This is not the biggest podcast. We need those 4 people to listen to us. Stop being mean to the Libertarians, James.
Oh,
I know
yeah,
that. I
'cause
know.
I'm the one that had the rant.
I know I started it, but you need to stop it. You need to be the mature one in the room.
No, that's never going to happen.
All right, cool. So Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, which is the other Supreme Court.
Yeah. Supreme Court 2.
Yeah, the Supreme Court 2.
There's only 3 up for this one.
Yep.
And the
All
incumbents all stayed.
all won, and they were all Republican.
All Republicans.
So-
I think you literally put an R next
Straight
to your name.
Republicans for the courts in Texas. Okay. Cool. So what does this say? Do you think this says anything about does this dissuade or put away some of these concepts of a Texas flip or Texas trending purple? I mean, because you look at the courts and
Like I said, I think it can be purple when it comes to the top of the ticket. Everything else, when it comes locally, as we're seeing here, it's even this thing of the courts, it's still staying red.
so
I mean, because over 9 million people voted for all 3 of these people. So there was a lot of people in Texas that made sure to vote on the court.
yeah. So you have you see the air quotes, right? You have the higher up elections, them being the federal and the White House, that tend to trend purple in Texas, but the lower stuff tends to be a deeper red.
Still very Republican. Yeah.
What does that say about Texans? Because that to me, at first I was saying it was weird, but
They'll let federal do whatever it wants when it comes to local.
kinda
They're
like
like, we're
that.
sticking to our guns. We don't
kinda
like change.
that. I really do. I kind of like the fact that Texans are willing to think about it, right? They're willing to go by the person, right?
At least go box by box.
Yeah, I know. And when this is an experiment that we had, because I remember 2018, straight ticket voting was an option in 2018.
Yeah.
It wasn't this year, and so you get to see that. I don't know how it was in other states, but you get to see that at least in Texans, in Texas, Texans are willing to look at the individual and say, okay, I like this, I don't like this, and you see that by the fact that a lot of people, a very large segment of Texans, went into the polling places, they voted Biden, and then went straight REP all the way down the rest of the ticket.
Right.
Which
They're
is,
willing to give Biden a shot. Maybe they don't like Trump. I mean,
Yeah.
he tweets a lot. I get it.
which is interesting.
But
And I, like I said, those that know me know I really don't care about who's sitting in the White House. I care more about who's sitting
who
in
affects my life directly?
Yeah, who affects my life directly. But it's interesting. I'm rather proud of my state for hearing that. Anyway, so yeah, the courts are straight red, and then the rest of it is the Texas Texas House, which we've already.
Well, yeah, it's just. I would say that the most recent ploy because Trump was even saying it himself, is I'm the law and order air quotes candidate.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's another reason why people kind of flock to going Republicans. Like, well, if he's Republican, he's just like this guy, so he'll vote this way. When it probably is the same exact voting how that person's going to do in the first place.
Yeah. So the rest of it is the Texas Congress, and we talked a lot about the Texas House. Let's take a second and talk about the Senate for a second, right? So with Senate District 1, right? District 1, Brian Hughes won 75% of the vote, just like old what's his name? Who's the guy that the U.S. Senator that we talked about?
Oh, Cornyn?
No, not Cornyn. The U.S. The guy that out in the 903.
Gohmert?
That always wins.
Like Louis Gohmert?
Yeah, Gohmert.
Yeah.
Right? So just like Gohmert, same area, this guy walked away with the Senate seat, 75%, right? So there are a lot of...
I almost feel like in those areas, they're like, I'm running as Democrat. It's like, so you drew the short straw, huh?
Yeah.
It's like, no, we have a chance. That's sweet. You think you have a chance.
Yeah, you have a chance in certain parts of Texas. You don't have a chance out there.
Not in East Texas.
You don't have a chance out in rabbit hunting country. That's ain't happening, right?
Which is funny because, you go back, maybe 75 years.
Yeah.
It was flipped the other way.
It was very Democrat, yeah. But now you go out there, you say, you hear them banjos? Yeah, you in the wrong spot. You in the wrong spot, Democrat. No, but we've got a lot of, so there's a lot of incumbents. Again, Texas Senate District. Everything kind of stayed virtually the same.
That is impressive, though. All this turmoil. It's very easy to blame the Republicans right now because they happen to be in the lead.
Mm-hmm.
And it'd be very easy, like, you're not doing your job. And that's a really good political line to use on him, even if wrong or right. And they somehow stayed it.
Yeah, there is going to be one flip. It looks like Texas Senate District 19 is going to go to the Democrat, Ronald Gutierrez. The incumbent, Pete Flores, Republican, looks like he's, it's 100% of the vote is in, and Ronald Gutierrez is up.
So you're saying there's a chance, though?
65 to 30. Yeah.
What about 101%?
No, there is no chance. There is absolutely no chance. Other than that, you get a lot of, you get a lot of incumbents going, and again, it tends to go along the same lines. The districts that voted Democrat are voting Democrat again. The districts that voted Republican are voting Republican again.
That's what was amazing sometimes. They wouldn't call certain states. The counties they were waiting on have voted Republican or Democrat for eons.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we just don't know yet. Like, you don't know?
Yeah.
You have no idea how this very red or very blue district is going to vote again?
Yeah, they did that.
It's like them say, like, well, we're waiting on the results from California. I think we can take a wild guess what California's going to do.
Yeah.
You can go ahead and chalk up the votes.
For those of you guys that live in our area, right? So in the North Texas, north of Dallas area, that are wondering what's my Senate district and who is my representative and did they or did they not win? You are in Texas Senate District 12. Your race is between Shaddy, or it's Shaddy. It's not Shoddy. It's Shaddy. Shaddy Zatoun, one of the more interesting named candidates in the history of the United States congressional process, right? Shaddy Zatoun and Jane Nelson, the incumbent Republican, who is early. It looks like there's a lot of polls that have yet to be reported because there were a ton of polling locations for this particular district. There were over 800 polling locations.
Oh, good golly.
That had Jane Nelson on the ballot. But in this very small percentage, the Jane Nelson is ahead by quite a lot. It's 62.4 to 37.6.
Oh, whoa.
You could see a tightening as some of the.
Well, how much percentage is in? Does it not show like a percentage on there?
Less than 20. Less than 20%.
Oh, so yeah, still a lot to count.
So you could see a tightening there, but I think Jane Nelson's got that. I don't see that. I don't see that flipping.
She may win the race, but she lost the name game because her competitor has a much better name.
Shaddy Zatoun. I would just love to say, who's your congressman? Shaddy. Congressman Shaddy. That doesn't sound good, right?
not
For
too
what it's
shabby.
worth, right? For what it's worth, if you live in Senate District 26, which I believe is down in the San Antonio area, your incumbent is winning, Democrat Jose Mendez, who is beating the Green Party candidate because there is no Republican in that
I think in that area they're probably the same thing. It's like, yeah, I'm not gonna run. We have no chance.
Basically running unopposed at that point, right? And then the Texas House is what we talked about before. Not a whole lot shift. There were a couple. I think there was 2, maybe 3 House seats that actually shifted in the Republicans' direction. So there was a little bit of a pushback.
But it was already Republican in the first place, right?
Well, no. It's these went. They were Republican originally. They went.
No, the House in its entirety is still Republican.
It's still Republican, right? So they're going to keep their majority in the Senate. They're going to keep their majority in the House. It doesn't look like Texas on a local level is going anytime soon. Now, as far as your local elections, I encourage you to actually look those up yourself because the fact is there are tons of local elections, and
Where can they look that up?
I have
man?
enough information. You can look that up in all sorts of different places. Really, the best thing to do is go to Ballotopedia. Look up the races that are in your area, like I said before, or maybe you already know, and you can look up those stats. Generally,
you may have an actual answer, unlike the president, where there's no answer.
Exactly. For most of these places, you'll have an answer, right? It really is surprising to me how many of these local elections are actually going into the next day.
Yeah.
Because you would assume that these local elections would be decided because there's fewer votes, right? But you would assume that they would be decided quicker, but
You think they just got close and they're like, dude, we can take a day off. People are going to chalk it up to 2020 anyways.
I don't know.
So they're not even going to get mad at us.
I don't know, man. There's a lot going in there.
Because all you really have to do is explain it, and there's a lot of people who would be like, that's a good sense. You just shrug your shoulders and say 2020, and a lot of people would be fine with that answer. Like, yeah, 2020, you're right.
Well, it's looking pretty strong. Like things are going to stay the way that they are, right? And we're not going to see a big shift. So we're not trending in one direction, but we also didn't go back in the other. So out of hearing all of this, right, starting at the top where Trump won Texas pretty favorably, so did the Senate, so did a majority of the houses. There wasn't any flips in the House districts one way or the other. So Texas remained. This is a big long podcast to say that really not a whole lot has changed in the elections, right? So Texas has remained pretty stagnant. How do you feel as a Texan, knowing that things are going to more or less stay the same? How do you feel?
I'm fine. I mean,
you're fine.
For most of Texas, it typically tries its best to leave you alone. I'm cool with that. Make a few laws, I get it. Fix a few things, yes, but for the most part, just leave me alone.
How should Democrats feel?
Ooh, they put a lot of money in Texas.
They really did.
And it didn't seem to crack the code.
Yeah.
So I think it'll force them to readjust strategy because they realize you can't just keep throwing money at a thing and expect it to work. You have to have a different strategy, and I think they've realized maybe copy what Beto was doing. Yeah, he lost, but dude got close. But what I have seen is this is a moral victory. Yeah, you know who says that? Losers. I mean, my coach would say that sometimes after a football game. It's like, you're only saying that because we actually lost. Like, no, you quit trying to make people feel better. You lost.
Yeah.
So they just realize
you're talking about when you play. You're talking about when you play Clemson.
Shut up. That was like 2 times.
Moral victory. 2 moral victories for Alabama.
Saban still has a lot of rings.
Okay. We're still okay. Gosh,
you're gonna hear fighting noises in the background.
You're like a Cowboys fan, man. We got a lot of rings. Yeah, from decades ago.
Hey, but Saban's is recent.
Yeah, well, I don't even care.
That's
anyway,
right,
I really don't care. I went to a D2.
So here's this D2.
I went to a D2 school. I went to D2 LSU. Right, we were right across the street from D2 Bama, Arkadelphia, Arkansas, Washita Tigers. Go purple and white. Anyway, so I think that if you're a Democrat, last night hurt. I think it's stung.
Texas wise, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's stung.
You still have a chance to draw the president because right now he is winning.
Yeah, if you're a Democrat in Texas, and again, this is weird because it really doesn't matter. It's just about whoever wins the presidency. That's how people are going to feel.
Right.
People are going to care. But I will tell you this.
But if you're a Democrat, if Biden wins, that is like a huge victory to you because you find Trump so like appalling.
But I want you to understand something. If you're a Democrat in Texas particularly,
you were outnumbered.
Yes. If you're a Democrat in Texas particularly, even if Biden wins the presidency, last night should have still hurt a little bit. right? It should have stung a little bit because there was a lot of money for the and I mean, again, if you work in politics, you probably know what I'm talking about. But I want to make this very clear. Um, there was a lot that went into this idea of a Texas flip. We heard a lot about it, especially if you live here in the state, and that just didn't materialize. Right, the line was drawn, and to quote Jean Picard, "Here this far, no farther." Right.
Yeah.
And they kind of held that line pretty well. But I think you're hopeful if you're a Democrat in the Republic of Texas. I think you're hopeful because
Well, to be fair for Democrats too, they held their line as well. Like
there wasn't that much
really flip.
There wasn't that much of a rebound.
Yeah.
Right. There was a little bit. Right. There was a little bit of I would say that we trended a tiny bit in the red direction.
They just couldn't get votes. They just couldn't get new seats, just like Republicans could get new seats. Like, well, maybe
Yeah.
it's a stalemate.
Yeah.
So someone's tactics have to change.
But there wasn't that much of a rebound. You didn't lose yardage.
Yeah.
Well, you didn't lose that much, right? You didn't lose that much yardage, and so I think you can be hopeful for the future if you're a Democrat in Texas on a local level. What that means for the country, don't know, and I can't say that I care yet.
I say don't care.
Because I think I would, because I think that'd be really interesting to see what would happen if Texas flipped. I wouldn't necessarily care as much as other people might.
Well, from our friend's standpoint, he would have
yeah.
lost it.
He would have lost his ever-loving mind, man. He would have been out punching trees.
Where's an axe? I'm chopping some trees.
For sure. But I don't care that much. I just think it would be really interesting to see what would happen if Texas did flip. Texas ain't flipping anytime soon, though. I don't think.
I think we get
so.
those very staunch Republicans we're seceding.
Yeah, I think if you're a Democrat,
There's enough of this.
I think if you're a Democrat, you need to buckle up and settle in, because it's gonna be a long haul to get that flip. I don't see that happening, and I mean it might happen in 20 years, maybe at the earliest, because Republicans seem fairly content to.
I think also if you're a Democrat, you should really just keep focusing on your own local elections. They've been trying, like Nick said, since 2008 to try to say Texas is gonna flip purple for president. It's not. It's just not. So focus on your local elections. Maybe get more Democrats that actually think like you and want to improve the city or whatever they're promising to you. As all politicians promise everything in the world to you.
Yep.
And so maybe that could be where you put your focus on and start caring a lot more about who actually directly affects you. Because of the presidency wise, like Nick's last show, happen to watch it, by the way.
Thank you.
He actually said, there's a lot of partisan blah blah, but if Trump wins, this will happen. If Biden wins, this will happen. It's really not going to matter. It's really not going to directly affect you, and it shouldn't. If it starts directly affecting you, that's when you be worried, even if it's something you like, because now it's way too much power for one person to have.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. What I like to say is this, and so this is encouragement for Democrats. If you were going to compare politics to a sport, it would be baseball, not football. Football, everything depends on the draft, and everything can shift on a dime, right? If you have one good draft, then all of a sudden you're really, really good. And I know that politics can feel that way sometime. Unless you're
we're not. Elliott
we're not talking about that. That's going to be another hour. I know it can feel that way sometimes. I know that can feel like if you look at you look at the top of the ticket and things shift dramatically from one way to the other. The fact is that at your base level, they really don't. Politics is more like baseball. Baseball doesn't rely on a draft. Baseball relies on a minor league farm system. Right. You got to make sure that you're getting people into your farm system so that you can raise those people up, and then they will become your great players.
I just imagine there's some big camp out there, Democratic candidate.
Yeah,
training.
exactly.
Let's do this.
Training facility, right? You got the Democrat, but the fact is that if you're a Democrat, you got to focus on the minor leagues, and you're going to suffer a little bit more down there. You're going to have to kind of slog it out. But if you can get those seeds planted at a local level, they will materialize at the national level at some point. Okay, James, if you are a Republican in the state of Texas, how do you feel?
Thought we already answered that one.
You already answered that one?
For Republicans, you feel pretty good.
I feel like yesterday was a win. And I feel like the thing is, I feel like if Biden ends up winning the presidency, Republicans are going to feel like it wasn't a win.
Yeah.
I don't think that's true.
They focus too much on the ones that doesn't matter.
I don't think that's true. Again, the presidency is, especially when you're talking about the president candidates being Joe Biden and Donald Trump, right? Super contentious individuals. It's just you need to put that election in its own category, right? I don't think it really indicates very much about the way the country's looking. I think you feel confident if you're a Republican, right, on a national, and especially if you're in the state of Texas, you should certainly feel confident on a state level. You guys held your ground. You made sure that this trend that we saw in 2018 didn't materialize again today. That being said, if you get caught sleeping, you run the risk of losing more yardage, right?
Yeah.
And yardage, which by the way, it does seem is very difficult to get back. So I think you feel confident, but you need to make sure that you are cautiously optimistic about the future, because like I said, what we are seeing in Texas is that when you lose ground, that ground is very hard to gain back.
Well, no matter what side you're on, if you think like, well, my vote doesn't matter, maybe nationally, you probably got a good point. But locally, it freaking matters.
Oh, yeah.
So if you really believe in this one side or the other side, vote it. If you don't vote it, you really can't whine.
Yeah.
And if you do, I'm not going to listen to you because you didn't even try to at least give your side a chance.
So looking forward, because the election, for all intents and purposes, is over. That doesn't mean we're not going to see more stuff moving in the
You're going to see a lot more Kanye.
moving in the future. Shut up. Anyway, doesn't mean we're not going to see a lot more moving in the future with regard to the election, but it's not the election itself. This election itself is over.
For Texas, yes.
For Texas, certainly. Moving forward, I want to give you guys this encouragement. You're going to have another election cycle, right? Everybody says, well, I vote every election cycle, every 4 years. And I go, no, every 2 years. Elections happen every 2 years. Now, in 2022, there will be no senator up for grabs in Texas, right? So Cornyn and Cruz are going to stay until 2024.
They're going to cruise by.
Yeah. Cruz will cruise by until 2024, in which case he will be up for election again. But the thing is, Cruz might run for president in 2024. So if Cruz runs for president in 2024, he might have somebody else run in his Senate seat. So,
I don't know. I guess it really does depend who wins this time of what kind of candidates will be chosen for the Republicans.
I think Cruz is really posturing for a presidential 2024.
Well, he did in 2016. He lost.
He lost. Yes, he did. He lost to Donald J. Trump.
Lost to Orange Man.
He lost to Orange Man bad. But yeah, so what I'm going to encourage you guys to do is in this next election, vote. Go vote, because midterm elections always have embarrassingly poor voter turnout.
And those are the ones that have like a lot more people that can directly affect you.
And I think that is a blight on our society, the fact that people don't vote in those. Go vote in those elections. But, as I said before,
don't vote Libertarian.
Be informed. Be informed. You can vote Libertarian. I don't care.
That's not what you were saying.
I don't care if you vote Libertarian. Do so based on your convictions and do so based on your research. Be informed. Go out there. Go vote. James, any closing thoughts before we depart?
No. I just really hope there's an actual count before my next birthday.
Yeah. When's your birthday?
October. So we got a while.
I think somebody will have been drug into the White House one way or the other by that point. I hope so. Gosh.
What if Biden this whole time was like, I was just kidding. Why? Whoa, where are we going here?
Gosh. Friends, until next time, America is great. This election was weird, and your local matters.